The Life and Philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche by Crystal Thurmer. Friedrich Nietzsche was born on October 15, 1844 in Rachin, Prussia, just outside of Leipzig. Nietzsche was born to Karl Ludwig Nietzsche and Franziska Ohlheiler. Nietzsche's father, like his grandfather and brothers, were Lutheran ministers. One was even a Protestant scholar. Included in Nietzsche's family were his sister Elizabeth and a brother named Ludwig. When he was 4 years old, Nietzsche's father died from a brain ailment. Shortly after, about 6 months, his younger brother died as well. After the death of the brother and father, the family moved to live with Nietzsche's paternal grandmother and the 2 unmarried sisters of his father. The family moved into a house of their own 6 years later after his grandmother had died, and they then lived in Naumburg, Germany. Much of Nietzsche's childhood was plagued with illnesses, however. These ranged from migraines to violent stomach spasms and also moments of short-sightedness, leaving him practically blind from time to time. For most of his primary schooling, Nietzsche attended a boys' school and then attended a private school. Eventually, Nietzsche entered Sforza as a student from the ages of 14 to 19 because he had shown talent and interest in music and language. When Nietzsche graduated from Sforza in 1864, he decided to continue his studies at the University of Bonn. He studied as a theology and philology student, a field that at the time centered on interpretation of classical biblical texts. While at Bonn University, Nietzsche became a member of Burschenschaft, a fraternity, so to speak, of students who were and are inspired by nationalistic and liberal ideas. Nietzsche gave up his studies on theology and lost his faith after only 1 semester at Bonn, all to the disapproval of his mother. Shortly after giving up his studies in theology, Nietzsche focused on studying more philology. Nietzsche studied under Professor Friedrich Wilhelm Ritschl and soon moved to the University of Leipzig when his professor did. Not soon after moving to Leipzig with his professor, Nietzsche established his own career in academics by publishing many essays on Aristotle, theologians, and Simonides. At the age of 23, Nietzsche left school and joined the Prussian Artillery Division in Naumburg as part of the required 1-year service. While in the military service, Nietzsche lived at home with his mother. In March of 1968, not long after Nietzsche joined the military service, he suffered a severe chest injury. While trying to leap into the saddle of his horse, Nietzsche didn't make it. Because of this injury, he was put on sick leave and stayed in the military only until November of 1968. His chest, however, would not heal, and Nietzsche eventually returned to his studies in Leipzig. During this time, Nietzsche gave up his citizenship as a Parisian. He remained stateless the rest of his life. However, when the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 broke out, Nietzsche worked as a medical orderly. During this time, Nietzsche experienced and witnessed many of the effects of battle. While working as a medical orderly, he contracted many diseases such as diphtheria and dysentery. It is also speculated that Nietzsche contracted syphilis and a few other infectious diseases that may have led to his breakdown later on. At the age of 24 in 1969, and much due to his professor's influence, Nietzsche started a teaching post at Basel University. This was well before he had completed his doctorate or certificate for teaching. He was a professor of classical philology. Surprisingly, the teaching post came at a time when Nietzsche was going to consider giving up his studies in theology. Nietzsche took a break in his teaching career when he went to the Franco-Prussian War, however. When he came back from the war, he returned to the same teaching post at Basel. During this time as a professor at Basel, Nietzsche published many works that weren't received so well. However, in 1879, due to health issues, Nietzsche was forced to resign from his post at Basel. After his resignation, Nietzsche spent the majority of the next 10 years as a wanderer. Most of the time he took up residence with friends or the slight family he had for short periods of time and then moving on. His travel took him to many places in Europe, from the French to the Swiss, German, and Italian cities. In the wintertime, Nietzsche would spend most of his time in the south of France or Europe. The Mediterranean seaside of Nice was one of his favorites. The air and the climate made his illnesses not so bad. During the summer, Nietzsche went anywhere from Turin, Messina, Florence, Rome, or Venice to Leipzig, where he attended school. When Nietzsche was 37 and in Rome, he met Lou von Salome, a Russian woman studying philosophy, and fell in love with her. While it is speculated as to whether or not he did propose to Lou, if he had, she had ultimately refused him. Also, during his wanderings, Nietzsche had applied to take up a teaching post at the University of Leipzig. However, he was told that because of his writings and his views towards Christianity and the concept of God, he had become unemployable. Nietzsche was outraged, and during this outrage he wrote, "And hence my rage, since I have grasped in the broadest possible sense what wretched means. the deception of my good name, my character, and my aims. Suffice to take from me the trust of, and therewithin the possibility of obtaining pupils. On January 3, 1989, the mental decline of Nietzsche began in the streets of Turin. While it is unsure exactly what happened, it is believed that Nietzsche witnessed the whipping of a horse by a coachman. He then threw his arms around the horse's neck and collapsed. He was approached by 2 policemen because of the public disturbance and taken to a hospital. More signs of his mental illness came in the days to follow. He had sent out letters to friends that had called for the German emperor to leave Germany and be shot. He had established delusions of being crucified by German doctors in a very drawn-out manner. After several of his friends received these letters, one of it took him upon himself to travel to Turin and bring Nietzsche back to a hospital in Basel. Since Nietzsche seemed that he wasn't going to come back from the insanity he was now gripped with, his mother moved him to a clinic in Geneva. For 3 months, an art historian named Julius tried to cure Nietzsche's mental illness, saying that the doctors were ineffective. But because of his secrecy with Nietzsche, Julius was discredited and lost his control and care over the patient. His mother had him removed from the clinic in March of 1890 and brought him home to care for him herself. He lived with his mother till 1897 when she passed away. He was then cared for by his sister. While he was unable to speak or move, Nietzsche had many frequent visitors right up until his death. On the night of August 24th in 1900, he suffered a stroke. He died on August 25th, 1900 around noon. His body lays today in his family's gravesite beside the church in Raaken, where the rest of his family, including his mother and sister, now rest. The cause of Nietzsche's death was ruled a stroke. It is still widely debated as to what caused the stroke, however. Many have said it was because of the syphilis infection he was thought to have contracted during the war. Another theory is that, like his father before him, Nietzsche died of brain tumors. Others have said that he had died from an overload of philosophy. His ideas became too complex and great for him, and it drove him to his death. Finally, the most convincing one is that his mental illness and dementia got to him and he gave up his will to live. During his career in teaching and wanderings, Nietzsche published many books. His first book was published in 1872 when he was 27. The Birth of Tragedy was a book about the Greeks. His essay on Truth and Lies in a Non-Moral Sense was published a year later in 1873. Probably what he is most famous for is his proclamation that God is dead. This appeared in his well-known work, The Gay Science. Nietzsche had many other works, including Beyond Good and Evil, On the Genealogy of Morality, The Antichrist, and his last one, Iso Homo. Unknown to Nietzsche, he also has The Will to Power, unpublished manuscripts edited together by his not-so-philosophical sister. So many people discredit these writings because she had left out important pieces and organized them to her interpretations and not Nietzsche's. Nietzsche's philosophy is complex. He had opinions on many different subjects, many of which are still widely debated today, and of which he is used for reference. He had ideas about culture and truth. He had a concept called will to power that is truly involved. He had views on knowledge and Darwin, and also most widely known for his views on God, Christianity, morality, death, and the universe. One of the ideas he thought most of was will to power. Will to power was Nietzsche's way of understanding human motives for behavior. He believed that the will to power was an adaptation or survival element. In will to power, pain, suffering, and contradictions are no longer seen as objections to existence, but as an expression of its actual tensions. He felt as though humans were subjected to unconscious, involuntary, overwhelmingly self-destructive instincts. He thought that, instead of looking at what power can be given to us through divineness, to look at what power man can create from himself. Schopenhauer, who lived a century before Nietzsche, had written that everything someone does comes from a will to live. Nietzsche contradicts and disagrees with this by saying everything a person does or is motivated to do come from a want of gaining power, or will to power. Nietzsche believed that his theory of will to power provided a more basic explanation on human behavior than other forms of explanation such as utilitarianism or Platonism. Nietzsche believed that there was an eternity before human beings came into existence, and believed that after humanity dies out, nothing significant will have changed in the greater scheme of things. Nietzsche also thought that after death, one would live their life over and over again. The exact same moments were to reoccur every time you died. Some would wonder if this was a thought-out experiment or if it was something that Nietzsche truly believed in. His idea was that those who recoiled at the thought of reliving their life continuously for an eternity had not yet learned to love and value life. And those who embrace this idea were truly living the right sort of life. Many also believe that this is what Nietzsche hoped happened to him after his death. God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him. What was holiest and most powerful of all that the world has yet owned has bled to death under our knives. Who will wipe this blood off for us? This is one of Nietzsche's most famous and widely spread ideas, the belief that the Christian God is dead because of us in science. He believed that we killed God when